Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast that explores the Great Resignation. I'm your host, Brian Akar. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the reasons they decided to leave their jobs during the pandemic and what has happened since. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Why I Left podcast. In today's episode, I chat with Daniel Jordan. Daniel is the owner of Demo Pros, a commercial and residential demolition company in Montana. Now, after getting furloughed from his job in California and taking a leap of faith in a new state with other contractors, he learned that his efficient ways of working were not well suited for working for someone else. Let's go check out his story. All right, hello. So our guest today is Daniel Jordan. Daniel founded the company Demo Pros in Belgrade, Montana, where his mission is to provide a healthier and cleaner solution to interior demolition by providing a dust-free environment during projects. I'm really excited to have him share his story of self-actualization during the pandemic. So Daniel, hello, how you doing? Thanks for joining today.
I'm doing well, Brian. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
Definitely. And, so prior to discussing, how you got involved with the Great Resignation, I'd love for you to tell us, a little bit about your upbringing and where you currently call home.
So I was born and raised in Fresno, California. I spent the first 28 years of my life there. I have been in Belgrade, Montana for the last 2 of my 30 years. Moving here has been the best decision and the scariest decision I think I have made in my life thus far.
No, I like them. We're definitely going to dig into that too. And so when you think about some of the work that you've been doing, what have you been passionate about in some of those projects?
A lot of the projects that I've been doing, especially with the equipment that I utilize, is, bringing something new to the table, is providing a service that nobody even thought was possible. And then when we come in and we show them that it is possible and we do provide that service, just that, not just the look on their face, but everything about the experience and making that person happy, and being a part of their dream and what they want in life is really what brings joy to mine, and then on top of that, being able to, be there for not just myself and my company, but, my employees and things like that really brings some purpose to me. So.
No, that's great. And now, have you always been in the kind of demolition or construction business?
So I worked as a painter for a couple of years. I did a little bit of concrete work, and then that's when I got hooked up with my previous boss out in California, who taught me how to utilize the dustless equipment.
Got it. And so prior to starting your own company there, what's it been like in the work environments that you've been a part of, and really what's worked well in those spaces?
I have been very lucky to be a part of companies that have a good congregation of guys that get along very well. There's a good work environment, work ethic, especially great work ethic. It comes and it goes. But for the most part, I have been extremely lucky to be a part of great crews run by great people that have been very supportive. Even when I was breaking off to do my own thing, the company that I worked for, they understood and they supported it. So I feel I've been lucky in that regard.
Oh, that's great. And so I want to take you back a little bit, right? So let's go back to March 2020. The world kind of comes to a halt there, and we're introduced at that point to the pandemic. I don't think we knew how bad it was going to be, right? I think everybody thought it was going to be a couple weeks, right? But talk a little bit about how the pandemic affected you.
So right when the pandemic hit, I was kind of on board just with everybody else of, I didn't really think it was going to get as bad as it did. I didn't think it was going to be as big of a deal as it did, so I continued living my normal routine. And then I got a phone call, and the phone call was, hey, we're completely shut down for work. You have no work. So, it came like a drop of a dime out of nowhere. And so I made the decision. Previously, I've been in a relationship with a girl who moved out to Montana. And so I said, hey, if I am going to hide out anywhere, it's going to be with her. So I left everything in California on pause and moved out to Montana. And I moved out to Ennis. And It was the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, kind of turned into 4 weeks. I started getting pretty antsy, even when they were, I guess you'd say, paying me very well to do nothing. That's not kind of who I am as a person. So I took it upon myself to look for work. And people said I was crazy. People said, why don't you just enjoy the time off? And my response to them was, my brain doesn't take time off, so I need to find a way to utilize it.
Right. And so now so you make this huge jump, right? And so what did you learn during this time, or around at that time you moved out to Montana?
I learned that I was a lot more resilient than I thought that I was. I learned that I was much more capable of handling risks, like moving 1,000 miles away, and that I was suited for, I don't want to say chaotic lifestyle, but I was suited for being a busybody, and constantly moving. And it was really a journey that I learned so much about myself, going through this process of leaving my career and my family and moving 1,000 miles away, and then jumping into an industry that was kind of similar to mine, but also very different. So,
Got it. And so now you left California, said that your job was furloughed for a little bit, and then now you started working in Montana. So this is really at the height of the pandemic. And so how did the pandemic really start to affect your relationship with some of the new jobs that you found yourself doing?
it was kind of interesting. Actually, on my flight to Montana, it was March 9th. And I mean, airports were crazy. Things were getting shut down. Nobody knew what was going to happen. My flight ended up getting delayed because of a small earthquake that happened in Salt Lake City. So my flight was rerouted to Nevada, and I go to Las Vegas. And I'm sitting in the Las Vegas airport for hours, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm about to get stuck in Las Vegas. They're going to shut everything down. Well, like 9 hours later, I finally get the flight. I get to Montana. Like I said, I got a little antsy, so I started working with Buffalo Restoration. And the first thing I noticed was everything that we did. We were a essential company, so we didn't stop operating. But I mean, between the mask mandates, between no more than one person per vehicle, the way we interacted with our customers, the way some people looked at us for even being outside of our homes, I mean, the whole dynamic changed. Team meetings are no longer team meetings anymore. They were done individually one-on-one, which really took away from the team building aspect of the company, and you just see all of these things that were once flourishing and growing, everything came to a standstill.
Yeah. And so I'm out on the East Coast, and I remember, and I work in an essential business as well. And I remember very vividly what that shutdown was like for others, but still being very much occupied in my day-to-day work. Could you talk a little bit about what was it like out in Montana at this time, and what was kind of the vibe as it pertained to COVID? Because I know a lot of the attention is focused on some of the big metropolitan cities in the East Coast, some of the West Coast. But what was it
Right.
like in that space?
So, and I can kind of compare this to California, from California, which is a big metropolitan area,
Hmm.
and I was still in contact with a lot of people over there. And so they would tell me what it was like there. And then I would put it in comparison as to what it was like here in Montana. And it wasn't as locked down as a lot of the other bigger areas. There was a lot more movement here, in Bozeman and Belgrade and the surrounding areas. Not everything completely shut down. There was a lot of industries that were, industries such as like barbers, nail salon, stuff like that, where it was really one-on-one, face-to-face interaction. Those industries got hit pretty hard, but like construction didn't really slow down too much. The food industry, shipments were definitely slower. You saw a decrease in, selections in the stores and stuff like that, but nothing really like it was out in California. I remember getting phone calls of, we can't find toilet paper, we can't find disinfectant wipes, we can't find, hand cleaner. And a lot of that stuff, for the most part, was still accessible out here, in Bozeman, Montana, and the surrounding area. So it definitely was not as big of a reaction out here.
Got it. So now you're in Montana and you're working in this new role, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like you're in this role for about a couple years, right?
Correct. Yes.
And so now you're in there for a couple years, excuse me. and you decide, hey, look, it's time for me to make a change. Before I get to the kind of why you left, tell me a little bit about kind of those 2 years and what you were kind of picking up during your time in this new space, new surroundings, kind of a similar industry. But what were some of the things you were starting to pick up and realize that ultimately led you to say, hey, I think I'm going to start my own business?
Well, and see, when I started utilizing the dustless equipment out in California, I realized how amazing it was, and how it could really revolutionize the interior deconstruction, that people utilize for remodels and things like that. And so when I came to Montana and I started working for the restoration company, I noticed a lot of things were similar, but a lot was also different. A lot of things were built differently out here. The way they went about things was very different. The way they ran their crews was very different. And, I started to kind of just fall in line and learn their way of doing things. And then I would come across certain projects where I'd say, hey, I think that maybe we'd be better off, doing it this way or trying this or, trying this. And for the most part, it was kind of just shut down. I kind of felt like my ideas and stuff weren't kind of taken seriously. I continued to keep my head down and work as hard as I could and learn as much as I could. I got certain certifications and I started to see myself climb up that ladder and really move into a position of leadership, where people would come to me and ask me, like, hey, how would you do this? Or what would you recommend in this situation? And then I also got into more of a position where I was dealing with a higher customer base, where I was dealing more with, not just the customers, but third parties as well, like property managers, like plumbers that we had to subcontract in, electricians, and, different multitudes of people. And so I started learning more about how I was very good at communicating with other people, and keeping that level of conversation open on what's going on, what's happening, what you can expect moving forward. And as I started to really recognize these things in myself, I started to gain understanding that these are the things that it takes to own and operate a business. It's different from just doing the physical work. It's doing the physical work. It's doing the background work. It's, doing the bookkeeping, the accounting, the marketing. It's dealing with the customers. It's building the relationships. And as I moved more into a higher position for the restoration company, I realized that I was not only good at doing the physical work, I was good at a collection of these things, which was a rarity. I would go into my one-on-one meetings and they would say, you're really, really good in all areas, in comparison to other people are real good at one area, but, they struggle with the others. And so as I started to realize that I'm very good at these things and that my work ethic was really unparalleled, in every company that I'd worked for, my brain really started turning of, why don't I do this for myself? Why don't I take the risk? Now or never.
Right. And so May of this year, right, as we're actually recording this in June. So last month, you ultimately say, hey, 2 years in, I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. And you decide to leave your job. So ultimately, why did you leave your job during the pandemic?
Well, so once I had got it in my head that I was wanting to start my own company, I reached out to an organization called SCORE, and they were absolutely phenomenal. They gave me a counselor to work with, and we worked together for about a year. And this was while I was still employed with the restoration company. And I started putting the pieces together. The branding, the marketing, getting equipment, getting everything ready. And while I was still working for the restoration company, I had actually started launching my business. And so I started taking on, work here and there. And what eventually led me to say, no more of the restoration company, I'm going to invest 100% of my time into myself, was I had filled about 3 months of my schedule in advance. And even talking to my bosses back out in California who are 6 weeks booked out, I was almost twice that. And I realized that I had a choice to make, and it was either I stop what I'm doing and continue working for the restoration company, which wouldn't have been a bad thing. They were an awesome company. They paid very well. They had great benefits. They were great people to work for. But I knew that if I didn't take this chance and I didn't try, that in 5, 10, 20, 15 years, I was going to look back and regret it and say, what if? And I don't like to live with those things. I don't like to live with regret. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And luckily, I was able to leave the restoration company on great terms, hopefully with maybe even a possibility of working with them in the future, you know. But I said my goodbyes, I waved farewell, and my first day of operation 100% for myself was May 13th, and is the 13th today. And today is my first day off in an entire month, and it has been just fantastic.
That is great to hear. So, and congratulations, right? Congratulations there. The show is we've been talking to a lot of entrepreneurs. And so it's great to hear these stories, and more and more of them will be coming. And so I really appreciate you sharing that, and congrats on everything that's happening. So you make this move now. And so tell me a little bit, you started talking a little bit about it too, but how did this impact you? Ryan, how did it impact you to make this decision to finally take that leap?
Well, I mean, it's impacted a number of things. Housing out here is extremely hard to find. Yes, it is. It is very hard to find. This valley, Bozeman, and the surrounding area. I mean, the median home price is just skyrocketing. And now with me getting into my own business, I'm not able to buy myself. So that was a big impact on my part. Is how do I set myself up to be stable, while I grow my business until the point that I can buy. So it's affected my housing situation. Me going out on my own really has affected a lot of the relationships I have, the relationships that I started to nurture when I got here in Montana. The people that I decided to surround myself by, I lean on them, for decisions and things like that. So the relationships that I've started have really grown and nurtured, and we've become very close. Because I spend a lot of time with these people, bouncing ideas off them and talking about new ideas and, ways to progress in life. So it's affected my housing. It's affected my relationships. It's really affected my family. Now being able to work for myself, I can carve out my own time to be able to still help them, with whatever they need, even though I'm 1,000 miles away, giving me the freedom to be able to say, hey, I can be here for you, financially and a whole bunch of other ways. So, I mean, it's really affected so many aspects of my life, and it's just been all positive. So
That's really great to hear. And so now, very similar to how I was asking a little bit of what you learned during COVID. Now, if it's been, I know it's been 30 days, right? So it's very, very quick from a time frame standpoint. But as you think about this process, what's led up to it and where you're at now, again, congratulations on the first day off today, but kind of taking a look back these 30 days, what have you learned about yourself through this process?
So through this process, I mean, and when I say this process, it sounds very simple. It's a simple process, but there are so many working things that make what this process is. One of them is like I had to hire employees. I've hired employees, and at first in my head, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to hire some guys. I'll get them insured. I'll take care of them. I'll pay them well. I'll get them to work. But I didn't realize the responsibility, and that weight that now has shown me really what I'm capable of, And I've constantly said this to everybody. During this process, my biggest enemy was myself. 100%. It was myself. I mean, there was like a span of a month or two where I really, really was almost going to decide, like, I don't want to do this. I'll take the easy way, or I'll take a different way, And really throughout this process, like I said, I've learned really what I'm capable of, and not just for myself and my business, but what I'm capable of for other people. Being able to teach those people, being able to, and not just teach them how to do the physical work or, run a crew or anything like that. But I mean, these men, they come to me with questions about life in general, about girlfriends, about finances, about other relationships that they have with their friends, and I get this honor to be able to connect with my employees and not only provide them with work and provide them with a means to live, but I also get to learn about them, and I also get to learn from them, and I also get to help them learn in so many ways. And so this process has really taught me that what I have to give is so much bigger than just a job, or so much bigger than just a company that, helps to pay taxes and be a part of the economy here in Bozeman and Montana. So.
No, that is very well said. And one of the things I want to piggyback on that you just mentioned, you mentioned that there were times that you wanted to kind of go the easy route and stop. What was it that clicked for you that said, no, I can't do that?
So, in all brutal honesty, it was waking up every single morning, and the first thing that came out of my mouth wasn't happiness, wasn't gratitude to wake up. It was almost like something was telling me this isn't enough for you. You're not going to be happy waking up, going to the same job, and doing that. I mean, even though, and don't get me wrong, people can definitely find fulfillment in that, but that's just it wasn't going to fulfill me and my ambitions, and it wasn't going to make me happy. And so I continued to just put one step forward, and I always kept in mind something that a good friend of me said. He said, you wake up every single day and you kick the ball in the direction you want it to go in. And it doesn't matter if it's a hard kick, a soft kick. It doesn't matter if that ball only moves 1 inch. You wake up every day and you kick your goal in the direction that you want it to go in, and eventually you will get there. And that's what happened. I pushed through those couple of months, in those hard times where I really doubted myself. I'm happy to sit here and say that my first month was, I mean, by far more successful than I ever thought it could be.
That's great to hear. And it sounds like you're very, very, very self-aware about yourself. And I love to hear that in you. And so now you mentioned a company earlier talking about SCORE, and one of my first interviews was with a woman from Bozeman, Montana, who actually happened to work with SCORE. And so
Nice.
talk a little bit about that, some of the resources that you utilize to really, help your business grow and really get your feet on the ground here. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, and I had mentioned this, that, I have friends and stuff that I lean on, but SCORE was really the one-stop shop for the business building resources that I utilized. I contacted them, and it was less than 24 hours later that they sent me an email and they said, we've got a counselor for you. He'll be reaching out in 5, 4, 3. And so Rick, he reached out to me, and he basically just asked me, tell me about yourself. Tell me about the business you want to grow. And we had about an hour and a half long conversation. And he took a liking to me, and we started working every couple of weeks. I would bounce some ideas off of him. He would give me some homework. And that's how we started. I would then put in the legwork. I would do the homework. I would do the research. I would learn what I was supposed to learn. And then I would move on to the next meeting, and we would tackle something else. At first it was building financial projections, then it was learning how to build and manipulate spreadsheets. And then it was getting into customer base and marketing and, who your target groups are, and how to reach out to those people, what their characteristics were. And he really dived in depth, and it was great because he never just gave me the answer. You know, he gave me the tools to find the answer for myself that worked best for the situation that I was in and what I was trying to achieve. And so it was like every time I talked to him, it was like this enlightening light bulb that would just come on and be, oh, that makes so much sense. And then, we worked closely for about a year, and, we still have a great relationship. We still talk. I still bounce ideas off of him as the business grows and stuff. But I mean, they just covered everything that I needed, and it was fantastic.
No, that's great. And I've spoken to Rick a couple of times, and I'm going to try to get him on here. So a couple of things that we're working on. So stay tuned for that. And so I think this is a good segue into, your business, right? So you're an entrepreneur, you're, 30 days in right now, but tell us a little bit more about Demo Pros.
So we are an interior demolition company. We specialize in the removal of materials inside of homes and businesses. We offer something very unique, though. We have a special system that allows us to capture dust at its source. So we have high-powered vacuums. These vacuums have 3 HEPA filters built into the heads. They are rated very highly, these filters are, and they work on a self-cleaning system. So it's like a pulse system. So these vacuum filters actually clean themselves as you're utilizing them, and it keeps them from clogging. And so we use these vacuums and we attach them to manifolds that are bolted onto the end of our chippers and grinders and hand tools and stuff like that. That way, every move that we make while we're in your home, tearing out your floor or your bathtub or your shower or your kitchen, and we're actually sucking that dust up and we're capturing that dust at its source, and it eliminates it from becoming airborne. So you don't have to worry about any kind of dust particulate or any harmful material such as silica dust, residing in your home once we're done.
That's amazing. And now, obviously, it's just getting started. So you're in the Belgrade area. Any plans for? Do you think it'll just be Montana based, or how you'll expand at all? Any thoughts about that, or is it too soon?
No, actually, I have a ton of ideas. What my overall goal is I would like to have an outfit in Bozeman, an outfit in Big Sky. I'd like to have an outfit in Helena, Kalispell area, and then another outfit in Billings.
Okay.
I to own work lives in each of those locations and have, whoever is going to be running that location live at the work live. That way, they live above the shop and they're able to run, the business through that shop while they live there, basically. And, there are certain benefits to how that structure is set up for lots of different purposes. But no, I have very big dreams. I do. I have a vision, and it's going to be a lot of work, but I'm very excited.
It's good. It's nothing's worth doing if it doesn't take some effort, right? So I like that. So now, one part of the show I'd like to get across is, there could be a lot of folks who are in a similar situation, but really don't know what to do. So when you think about the advice that you would give to our listeners, what would you tell somebody who may be in a similar experience or may have a similar experience to yours, but they really don't know what to do next?
I would say first things first, investing in yourself is always the best investment. If you're, worried about not being able to make it, investing in yourself, I mean, you're not going to intentionally let yourself down. So having that courage to just take that step and invest in yourself, I think is critical. Another big point of advice that I utilized was building a support system before you pull the trigger. I utilized my support system multiple times a day, from big decisions to small decisions to, things that may occur or, which way I want to go, which way I want to build. Having that support system is vital. You hear a lot of people talk about, to build a business, it takes an army, and it really does. That leads into, I know that this may be a little bit off topic, but the notion of self-made and self-success. I don't truly believe that, because it does take an army. Another point of advice would be to ask questions, constantly ask questions, and then find the answers. If you have an issue, let's talk about it. Let's talk about your problem. Let's talk about your issue. But after that conversation, every conversation after that needs to be about solutions and finding the solution to that problem. But questions are that's how we find answers. So support system, the belief in yourself, and question every turn.
I like that. Thank you. And now, when you think about the direction in which you're looking to take this next chapter of your professional life, what does that look like?
I would love, like I said, to see, my business grow to service multiple different locations and multiple areas within Montana, and to bring a healthier, cleaner solution to the entire state, really, would be absolutely phenomenal. I would love to, maybe open up a different kind of business and get into, I don't know, maybe a clothing line. I'm also in the process of writing my autobiography. I am
Nice.
400 pages in, and I'm only 15 years old. And so, accomplishing that also is a huge goal of mine. I did not grow up in the best of circumstances, and I fought a lot of adversity growing up. And I think that story can be very motivational and very powerful and very helpful. So that's another big area in my life I'd like to see growth on. Family and friends, I'd love to see the people that I grew up with. I'd love to be able to reach out and help them out. Part of the reason of me starting this business was to be able to give back. That helped me. And so I'd really just want to see not just myself, but everybody else that I care about really reach that level and be able to follow their dreams. So to be able to, help them with that, would be fantastic. And, maybe get into owning some property, buying a duplex, buying a fourplex, being able to offer affordable employee housing for the people that work for me, and being able to really just be a part of Bozeman and the community and everything that it has to offer, getting my foot in the door with like HRDC. I hang out with a great group of guys from Bunker Labs who are all veterans. I go to some of their events. And I mean, I've turned in my brain, like, is there a way for me to hire these guys? And then because I'm American Indian, so I'm an American Indian owned business. So is there a way for me to be able to hire veterans and then get them on some outstanding healthcare, where they can get, huge healthcare benefits and stuff like that? And how do I integrate and be a part of that small community, of veterans? And it's really just, trying to grow in every aspect, in every area.
No, that's great. And you'll have to keep us here up to date on your autobiography, because if you release a book, we'll definitely, give you some publicity there. So thank you for that. So look, Daniel, this was a really good conversation. I loved hearing this type of story. And I just wanted to say thank you again for taking some time to speak with me today. Like I said, the stories, and you'll start hearing this pretty soon. There are many stories that I've been covering on entrepreneurship and folks who have just really decided to take that leap. And so to hear your story and to hear what you've done, I just really commend you for that. So when I think about that, where can our listeners really support you now? Where can they find you?
Well, they can find us at demoprosllc.com. They can also find us on Instagram and Facebook. I mean, really, the support can just come from, a simple like, a simple share, letting people know, and just kind of educating the community that there is a cleaner, healthier way for, your remodel projects or your demolition projects. And just, trying to get the word out there, that we're here, we're available. The service that we have is fantastic. And, we're excited to share it with the community. So.
No, that's great. Well, thank you again for that info. All right, folks. So look, that'll do it for today's episode. Again, I want to thank my guest, Daniel Jordan, for joining me today. And I'll be sure to share his information in the show notes. So I hope everyone has a great week. And Daniel, I hope you have a great week as well. And we'll see you next time.
Sounds good, Brian. You as well. Thank you.
The Great Resignation, people leaving their jobs in droves. There's a lot of buzz happening in the job market of late. Now, did you or someone you know leave your job during the pandemic and want to share your story? We've been having some really good conversations in this space. So if you're interested, I'd love to have you join the program. If so, here's how you can do it. First, you can email us at hello@whyleft.co. That's hello@whyleft.co. Or visit us online at whyleft.co. That's whyleft.co. Look forward to having you join the conversation. Thanks again for listening to Why I Left. Be sure to join us next time for more stories from the Great Resignation. Visit us at www.whyleft.co. That's whyleft.co. And subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.